Hey, welcome to Ultra Life Today. I'm Adam Payne. I'm CEO of Ultra Botanica. You could be joining us on live in our podcast or on WCRN radio or KCFO or KOKC, all those different radio stations where we broadcast live out of. We're about to embark on a discussion with David Sandstrom. He has a podcast called Healthy Matters. I think that's it. And he's a Christian naturopath with a very interesting journey. I've had the pleasure to talk to David a couple of times and to get to know him. We end up talking a little bit about my story, but we get into his story and his background. I'm always fascinated by meeting people whose life's journeys have been changed by a health event in their lives and that have given them the opportunity to take the learning that they've gotten from that health journey to pass it on to other people. We had Dr. Jay Dunn from My Happy Genes a couple weeks ago, and her health journey from depression and how that whole her brain chemistry was dysfunctional because of some genetic abnormalities that she had just as part of her natural genome. She was able to get wisdom about how her body, her cells uptake vitamin D, not just vitamin D, but all the cofactors, vitamin A and K2, which are two cofactor vitamins, and plus the minerals. And it changed her brain. Within a day, her depression was gone. And she had a happy brain. That's why she calls it myhappygenes.com. Dr. David Sandstrom, who's a naturopath practicing out of Georgia, he has a different story and a different take on health. And it's a Christian-based, it's a spiritual-based approach. And I'm really looking forward to sharing this episode with everybody. So hang on tight. Here's David Sandstrom and myself, Adam Payne, at Ultra Life Today. David Sandstrom here today from Natural Health Matters, and we are going to be talking about his story with how he got into natural health, and we're going to have a discussion. He has a podcast that has been ongoing for how many years now, David?
2 years.
2 years?
Almost 100 episodes in.
Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. It's really a pleasure to meet you, David, and to be able to do this joint podcast. We're really excited to see where this goes today.
Likewise, Adam, it's a pleasure meeting you. Happy to be here.
Yep, thanks for joining us.
Well, I know you're an expert in the nutritional supplement industry, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about supplementation and how to use them properly, and what they can do for us, and the importance of pursuing quality when you do nutritional supplementation. So why don't you give us a little bit about your background first?
Well, I came into the nutritional or the natural product space kicking and screaming. I did not want to do natural products. And I think it's because I grew up in a hippie home, David. I grew up with like beanbag chairs and ashrams. That was my life growing up,
Some incense burning in the living room.
Yeah, it was, and pot plants growing in the basement, shh, don't tell anybody,
Yeah.
It was, I had a real, a classic hippie upbringing. It was really, you couldn't get more hippie than what we had. And so, when I got into my adult years, I kind of rebelled against the hippie lifestyle. I mean, most people start off like straight laced and then they rebel and they go into the natural lifestyle. I went the opposite way and became kind of straight laced and all that. And, I found myself in I was in the pharmaceutical industry, developing drugs that for heavy duty indications like inflammatory bowel disease, sepsis, psoriatic arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, all these really heavy duty diseases. But, God had different ideas for me. I got really sick in 2008, and I partnered with a guy. I had to resign my position as CEO of a pharmaceutical company focused on inflammatory bowel disease because I got really sick. And when I finally recovered, the job had already been given to somebody else, and I had the opportunity to focus on a lab that was developing natural products. And I really didn't want to do it. But I felt like God had opened the door for me to work with these people. And uh, we started to just really thrive. There's you're a naturopath, and so you're familiar with different kinds of extractions, homeopathic drugs, and all the different
Sure.
things. And back in the 1880s, there was this guy named Count Mattei, and he developed a whole new school of homeopathy based upon alchemaic extractions. So you think about going from like the 1700s with Hahnemann and then the 1800s,
Right.
and alchemy was still this thing, all of these botanical drugs that were being developed. And he developed this whole school of botanical extracts called spagyrics. And these are extracts that are based upon, fermenting the botanical product and then calcinating it and taking the aromatic components. And so they were purifying all of these different components of the plant and then recombining it together in order to turn it into a botanical drug. We learned about this because there were these practitioners of this homeopathic school of medicine that were injecting this mixture of these plant extracts, these alchemy extracts, into the joints of people with rheumatoid arthritis, and they were going into remission. And this blew my mind because we looked at it and we're like, it's probably adulterated. It's probably not real, but it was real. There was we did the mass spec work and we looked at all of the fingerprints of all the components that were in this mixture, and there was nothing adulterated in it. And when we dug further, we found it wasn't just a normal extract; it was these alchemy extracts. But we couldn't deny the science. We were actually seeing people go into remission with rheumatoid arthritis, and
Wow.
and when we further studied it, we were able to save animals from sepsis using this extract. So it was doing something really, really profound on the immune system. Later, we developed it into a drug for eczema and psoriasis, and it was bought by Procter and Gamble in 2015. The drug is actually called Bodewell. It's being sold online as a treatment for eczema and psoriasis, and it's all natural, and it's just this. It's a crazy mixture of these spagyric extracts. But it was in the context of that, David, that God started to bring people to me that were working on different things in the botanical space.
Mm.
One researcher out of the University of Oklahoma was working on curcumin, and we all know curcumin. I mean, if you're in the natural product space, we all kind of like turmeric is like the star child of the natural products environment, right? Because
These days, yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
like everybody wants to, it's like if you want to deal with inflammation, oh, you got to use turmeric or curcumin.
Got to use some
Be-
turmeric. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I would go to these science meetings for rheumatology, the heavy duty science CME talks where all of the rheumatologists who come together, or all the gastroenterologists who come together at these national meetings. And I would see poster after poster about curcumin. So when this researcher came to me, B.G. Kurian out of the University of Oklahoma, and he said, "Hey, Adam, I have this compound based upon curcumin." I was like, I don't want to work in this stuff. People have already figured it out. It's not interesting. But God spoke to my heart, and I felt like I needed to help what he was doing, at least to be supportive. So I sat down with him and we went through the science. And honestly, David, it wasn't that exciting what he had done. He was just working on a way to solubilize curcumin in order to get it into the body. And he had already published about it, so there was no way to get a patent. And we tried to get some grants, but it didn't really turn into anything for years. For years. It
Mhm.
was really only in like 2013.
Adam, let me
Um,
interrupt you right there. Just for
sure,
those that are listening that aren't familiar with this discussion, turmeric
sure.
is considered an anti-inflammatory, and primarily because it has curcumin as one of its primary constituents. But curcumin is very difficult to absorb. So we've all heard the expression, you are what you eat, but that's not really accurate. You are what you absorb. And if you can't absorb
Exactly.
the curcumin, you're not going to reap the benefit from it. That's why a lot of the curcumin supplements out there have pepperine or black pepper as part of the ingredients because it helps the body absorb. So I know what you're going to tell us about is a new way to help to make this product more bioavailable.
Exactly. And in fact, that was the whole thing that the research at the University of Oklahoma had focused on. His whole thing was, the extracted active ingredients in the turmeric root, the curcuminoids, when they get extracted, they crystallize, they bind to themselves. And
Yeah.
these are a whole class of compounds called polyphenolic compounds. These are bioactive plant compounds that have phenolic rings in them. And those phenolic rings actually they like to attach to each other. And so when you essentially it becomes a big party, they all attach to themselves. And then when you take it into your body, it doesn't dissolve because they don't come out of the crystal. It's like swallowing quartz crystals and
Yeah.
expecting some silicone to sort of absorb into the body. It doesn't work.
Right.
Um, but BG's idea was very simple. He said, look, let's start with curcumin already in a liquid matrix. So let's provide to the body already solubilized curcumin. And the result was like a 12-ounce bottle of orangey colored water. And that was the dosage form. And you know what? When we drank it, we felt it. I remember we sat around the first time we made this stuff, David, and to the horror of the researchers because they were like, "Well, you can't take that internally. We haven't tested it in animals yet. We haven't seen whether it's safe or not." I was like, "You know what? This is turmeric water. It's curcumin in water. This is the safest stuff in the world. There's no toxicity associated with it." So we sat around the table, we took shot glasses of this stuff, and we felt it. Like within 5 minutes, we got this buzz in our heads. And I knew, and what was astonishing to me was that I knew at that moment that not only was it getting into my body, but it was getting into my brain because I was feeling it at this
Like a buzz.
cerebral level. Yeah, the buzz.
Yeah.
And that got my attention more than anything else I've ever worked on. When I felt it, I knew that there was something profound going on. And
Right.
but that was the start. It really, developing a 12-ounce bottle of liquid that you could sell in a health food store really was not a viable nutritional supplement. You're not going to carry 30 bottles home for your monthly supply. It just doesn't work. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It's not a viable product.
Right.
It really was about 3 years later that BG, the researcher, he came to me and he said, "Look, I'm using this to stain proteins in this scientific study that we use, and we're able to have the curcumin stained protein travel through this matrix in order to differentiate different size proteins. It's called a page gel, and most people don't know what this is. But what this spoke to me was that curcumin would bind to proteins before it would bind to itself. And we studied this. We found that the coefficient of binding was that the curcumin molecules would preferentially bind to protein structures before they would bind to themselves and aggregate and crystallize and come out of solution. So that gave me the idea back in 2014. Why don't we use curcumin or protein as a scaffold? And so we'd attach the curcumin molecules to this protein scaffold. And maybe as the body's digesting the protein, the curcumin would be absorbed and as soluble, bioactive, bioassimilatable material. And you know what? We made the stuff. We had some chemistry that's like a little secret sauce in there, but we got the same curcumin buzz when we first time we took it. So we
It's a
knew
brilliant idea.
it was the foundation of a whole set of patents that we developed at the time.
Hmm.
And so the UltraCur technology, we call it liquid protein scaffolding, and it's amazing. It works. In one
Hmm.
capsule is the equivalent of a whole bottle of solubilized curcumin.
Yeah.
And
So let
people
me
get
summarize what I believe I just heard you say.
sure, sure,
So if the curcumin will crystallize very easily, and it's not easily digestible in that crystalline form. And you ran into a guy who said, well, we can dissolve it in water, and it worked, but it was, you'd have to drink a whole bunch of it, so that, by a month's supply, you're filling your trunk up with this stuff,
yeah,
not
exactly.
a viable product in the marketplace. And then you had the idea, or I don't know if it was you or somebody on your team, of saying, well, if it will attach itself to this protein, then when the body absorbs the protein, which it's used to digesting, it will absorb the curcumin at the same time.
Yep,
So that's just a brilliant idea. Real quick, I got to share this because it's called liquid scaffolding technology, right? Liquid protein scaffold, you call it, right?
that's right.
LPS.
LPS technology. Yeah.
I got to share this real quick. It's kind of a medical thing, but I had a few years ago, I had a ladder fall, and I fell 26 feet,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I drove my tibia through my calcaneus. I shattered my calcaneus,
Oh my gosh.
and it was just in a bunch of pieces. And I went and found a really good surgeon. Excuse me. So I went into Atlanta and found a really good surgeon, and he said, we're not even going to talk about a fusion. I got enough bone fragment to put your foot back together, but here's what I want to do. I want to use a product called Cerament, and instead of using cadaver bone to fill in the gaps, I'm going to use this product. And what it does is it acts as a scaffolding for natural bone to grow into.
Yeah, it
And
makes
then when
sense.
when the bone replaces the scaffolding, the body enzymatically gets rid of the cerament, and you have new bone. And they use that on my foot, and I'm amazed at the quality of that the outcome I got out of that was pretty amazing. So I just wanted to share that because it's kind of similar here to this protein scaffold, because the protein is used as a building block, and then later on it's gone.
Exactly.
Kind of a similar
It
idea,
it definitely is a similar idea, and the beauty of what we've developed is that the body is used to digesting protein structures, right? I mean, we're designed to absorb proteins and break them down,
right?
but it's a beautiful delivery mechanism, and nobody's done this, and we were astonished. I mean, there's all sorts of different pharmaceutical delivery technologies out there. Nobody really came up with the idea, well, let's use protein as the delivery mechanism to get these botanical ingredients into the body. So we have
Right.
conjugates with curcumin, quercetin, resveratrol, CoQ10, uh, fisetin, harpagicides from the devil's claw family. We have so many different conjugates or scaffolds that we use, but the
Wow.
biggest one, the one that really is breakthrough for us, and that it serves so many people, is our UltraCur product, which is the curcumin protein scaffold, and it works. People get 70% of people have a transformative experience within a week, and half of those people within 24 hours. So I got to tell you a little bit of
That's
a story about
astonishing.
a
That's
little bit of a
amazing.
story about my experience, because I have arthritis in my left hand, and I have a 12-string guitar that I play worship music for my church.
Mhm.
And I'm a busy guy, so I don't always take my UltraCur. I'm like the worst person to take supplements, right? I have my bottles out, but like I forget all the time. But if I forget to take UltraCur before I start playing, I can maybe play for 20 minutes before my left hand just locks up in pain. It's like these first two joints just, it's so painful. But if I take UltraCur right when I start playing, or maybe 5 minutes after I start playing, I can play all night. And so
Wow.
this is the kind of experience that people get. And David, if as people know on our radio show, people can go to any number of the retail locations that are available in their local markets, or go to our store locator, and you can get a free sample of our product to see for yourself whether this works. We don't, we don't want you to just believe what we have to say. We have we It works so well. We give away samples. I think we're the only curcumin company, or the only supplement company that gives away samples because of how well it works
Mhm.
and how quickly it works for people.
Yeah, well, you have to share that link at the end of the show, and I'll make sure to put a link to that in the show notes as well. So, tell me a little bit more about um, the approach that we should take to supplementation. I mean, I supplement daily. It sounds like you do as well, but supplements don't replace food, right? They're
No.
exactly that. They're supplements. So, talk to me a little bit about your philosophy on how to use supplements properly.
So the body is so amazingly we're so amazingly made. I think there's two approaches that we should use. And one is work, first of all, if you can, find a great naturopath that can help guide your journey. And I think that that's kind of like that's step one, either a good integrative physician or a
Right.
good naturopath, because there are literally thousands of concentrated plant extracts available out in the world today. I mean, literally thousands. And people, and if you just go to Walmart and say, "Oh, I'm going to buy vitamin E, I'm going to buy vitamin C, I'm going to do all these things," a lot of times you can make the our our health worse. You're familiar with the whole vitamin E story. I mean, everybody was supplementing with delta tocopherol or alpha tocopherol for so many years,
Right.
and what was happening was that people they were taking so much alpha tocopherol, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to create this antioxidant gradient in our cells,"
Mhm.
but they were pushing out all of the other tocopherols, causing all sorts of other bad health issues. In fact, cardiac issues were getting worse for people that were supplementing with like alpha tocopherol. So I think step one is work with a good naturopath,
Mhm.
a health coach, an integrative physician, because there's so much wisdom that can be applied. Second is, uh, I think there's some great genetic testing out there that can help guide the story. And I don't know if you're familiar with the different companies that are doing some really great work in the space. Novo has a really great approach to genetic and um, metabolic cellular testing to look at how your cells actually process different nutrients. There's a company called 3x4, or it's a test 3x4, which Nova puts out, which gives a lot of wisdom based upon our genomics and which supplements might we need based upon all of the different DNA structures that we have in our body. And
Yeah,
there's a
that's
new
pretty
company.
exciting work. That's I think it's really promising. Of course, there's a lot of research to be done in that area, but it's
Yeah,
very
there is.
promising.
Are you familiar with the company myhappygenes.com?
No.
So we just actually interviewed the founder of this group, My Happy Genes. She has a phenomenal story. It's Dr. Jay Dunn. She's a researcher, a naturopath, a chiropractor, but her story really she dug down into the genes and how they affect all of the different nutritional pathways in the body, and that's a great toolkit to work with,
Mm.
um, and she only provides the data really through naturopaths or through physicians that get onto her stuff. But I just to consolidate my thinking, David. I mean, first and foremost, we need wisdom. We need wisdom to
Mhm.
understand which nutritional supplements, which are these concentrated botanicals or minerals do we need in order to facilitate the, um, uh, the health of our cells in our body. And then once we do that, then it's a question of finding the right botanical ingredient that from the right source that meets our needs.
Yeah.
Um,
So I want to go back to what you said earlier. Is start out with somebody who's knowledgeable, and if you
yeah,
go to a naturopath or a functional or an integrative medical practitioner, they're not going to get those supplements from a warehouse club, right? They're going to
no,
go and get professional grade, CGMP certified quality supplements because you want to know that what's on the label is in the bottle. Right. And,
exactly.
there's a lot of manufacturers out there, and you could probably speak to this more than I can, but either out of ignorance or perhaps more malice involved, that are not really, they don't have the quality control standards in place to actually consistently deliver what they claim is inside the bottle. Would you agree with that?
Oh my gosh. I just went to the University of Mississippi has a botanical drug conference every year in March. And I met a guy there, a guy named Ed Fletcher, who's actually whole business is sourcing botanical ingredients for the natural products industry. And I was at a presentation, and for echinacea, right, which is one of the most popular health, immune,
Right.
botanical ingredients out there. Did you know? And this blew my mind that the actual supply of echinacea is only 25% of of what is
The demand.
bought in the marketplace of the
Yeah.
demand. So that means that more than
Fillers.
75% of what is sold as echinacea out in the marketplace isn't echinacea. It's an
Yeah.
adulterate. We call it an adulterated product. So
Right.
it's so important to find reliable sources of these ingredients, and it's very rarely obvious who is
Yeah.
selling a quality product and who
It's
isn't.
hard to it's hard to
And
know.
and I
It
and
reminds me of the time was a few years back. Taco Bell was fined by the I think it was the Food and Drug Administration, or it was the USDA maybe. But anyway, they were calling their tacos a beef taco.
oh,
But someone from the government inspection said, "There's not enough meat. There's not enough beef in here to call this beef.
oh my gosh,
You've violated our guidelines. This is a beef like product, but it's not beef." And
it's
they got
beef
fined.
plus silt fillers and all sorts of
Who
crap.
knows what, some
Yeah,
beef like product that looks a little bit like beef, has the same texture, but there's not enough beef in there to call this beef. And who knows if it was, I don't know if it was done by ignorance or what it was, but that was a big headline for a while. And I think the same is true in the natural supplement business. If you're not buying from a quality manufacturer who sources their product ethically, and has quality control standards in place, you very well might be, at best wasting your money, but at worst harming yourself with something inside that bottle that you don't want to take.
absolutely. And it's unfortunately very, very difficult for the consumer to know what is a real product and what is a fake product.
Right.
You can go into a health food store or even a lot of compounding pharmacies, and you'll have four different choices of one particular ingredient in front of you. And you can go by price and say, okay, well, the most expensive one is probably the quality ingredient or the right one. But then you can go to like a brand, and you do trust the brand or not. It's so hard, and unfortunately, David, there's no easy answer for
Right.
finding the right products or the right quality supplier. And we do an
Yeah.
enormous amount of testing. I mean, everything that comes into our facility, we test for identity and then potency. And then when we're in the process of making it, we test to make sure that the capsule is what it says it is before it goes into the bottle. And we have
Mhm.
like an enormous amount of checks and balances that go through our system. But very
Yeah.
few supplement companies actually go through the same kinds of rigorous testing. One way to actually kind of be assured is to look and see whether a company has a third party GMP certification. If they do have a third party certification, like through USP or through Eurofins or through NSF, then that can point you in the direction that maybe probably that company is doing the right kind of testing to make sure that what they're saying is in the bottle is actually in the bottle.
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, CGMP stands for Certified Good Manufacturing Practices. And there are entities that will certify those products, third party, so that if it has that stamp of approval, that goes a long way towards assuring the consumer that there's something good inside the bottle.
Hey, we're going to take a break here. We've been talking to David Sandstrom about supplementation and what are good supplements and bad supplements. We'll come back next week to continue this dialogue. So stay tuned for the live portion of our broadcast. We will be coming live to you from a variety of different locations, depending upon where you're at. We're right now in 4 different radio markets. And looking forward to reaching out to you. So stay tuned.